Are you dealing with rodents in your home and you're trying to work with rodenticides to reduce or eliminate that population? Let's talk about some of the safe practices or best practices for a private homeowner who's working with rodenticide. The first thing I would say is if you're a private homeowner and you want to work with rodenticide, you need to do some reading on it. All right, you need to learn about the rodenticide that you're about to use. There's different types of rodenticide in our industry, and there's different types of rodenticides that are available to customers when they go out to Home Depot or different hardware stores. They all have different active ingredients, okay? And that means they all act in different ways and they have different effects, and they can even cause effects on secondary animals like, for example, birds of prey. That's becoming a much more of an issue as we move forward here, and it's something that homeowners don't take enough time to learn about before they go out and they go to the store and they just pick up a pack of rodent poison and they throw it out without any thinking. So the first thing I would tell you is make sure you're reading the label of the product you're using and make sure you learn about the product you're using to make sure you're using the right one. The second thing I would tell you is placement matters. All right, so you can't just take rodenticide and kind of put it everywhere. That's not how that works. You need to place the rodenticide in it has to be in a tamper-resistant container, so it needs to be in something that's sealed and locked and keeps children and pets out of it. Generally, when you're buying the rodenticide at the store, it will come with this, but there are some cases where you can buy loose bags of rodenticide. You don't want to just throw that out and like throw it out into your attic or put it out in your basement. You want to be very careful where you're putting it. You only want to put it in the areas where you know there's rodent activity, because if you're just throwing it everywhere and the rodents aren't ever going in that place, now you just have a block of rodenticide just sitting out and it's doing nothing except now it's potentially going to cause an issue if something else gets a hold of it, for example, like a child or a pet. So we're making sure that we're learning about our rodenticides, knowing what we're using, knowing how the product we're using works, and we're putting it in tamper-resistant containers. Another thing that I often suggest is starting out with a non-toxic rodenticide. Sounds crazy, right? Why would I use a non-toxic rodenticide? That's not going to remove my mice. No, but a non-toxic rodenticide is going to help you identify where the mice are, okay? And it's going to reduce the chances of you having any potential secondary kills. For example, like I said earlier, having a mouse that eats rodenticide, then a bird of prey gets that mouse. And we're trying to avoid things like that. So one of the practices we follow is we're going to lead with that non-toxic rodenticide, which is just a bait block with no rodenticide in it. It's just meant to get feeding on it so you can monitor for activity. So you put that in your boxes and then you monitor your boxes and you only go to an actual rodenticide when you're finding activity on that non-toxic rodenticide, okay? Which brings me to the types of rodenticides. There are different kinds. The most common one is an anticoagulant, which is one that has effects with blood clotting. It's the one that most often customers are going to find in stores. There are first generation anticoagulants and there are second generation anticoagulants. Okay? As a homeowner, you want to be using first generation anticoagulants. Second generation anticoagulants have much more risk for secondary poisoning, so I always advise my homeowners into going into first generation anticoagulants, as I believe it's much safer for somebody who doesn't necessarily have a background in pest control to be applying those. All right. And then the last thing I would tell you is rodenticides are a great tool in your arsenal for dealing with rodents, but ultimately the best solution to dealing with rodents is excluding your home. Yes, rodenticides can help you gain control of that population, but if you don't block off the entry points where the rodents are gaining access, even if you eliminate that population, it allows for more rodents to come in, and you don't really solve the problem. You're just kind of putting a Band-Aid on it. So I do think rodenticides are a useful tool to have in your arsenal, but it shouldn't be your primary focus as a private homeowner when you're trying to solve your rodent problems. It should be exclusion and then using that tool to control the population in your home, always making sure that you're applying it in a safe manner that keeps children, pets, and secondary wildlife all very safe while you're using it. All right, if you like this video, do me a favor and like and subscribe.